The morning sun rose sluggishly over Willow Creek, casting long shadows across the Carter family farm. Fields of corn and squash stretched outward in orderly rows, kissed with dew. It should have been a picture of peace, a sanctuary of resilience handed down through generations. But to Naomi Carter, standing on the crumbling porch of her farmhouse, it felt like a battlefield waiting to ignite. She wiped her palms against her worn jeans and scanned the dirt road leading up to the house. It had been happening for weeks now, subtle at first. A black SUV idling at the crossroads, strangers taking photos near her fence line, letters offering to relieve her the burden of maintaining the land. But Naomi wasn't just any landowner. She was a black single mother, a fighter, a survivor. This farm wasn't just property. It was her legacy. Inside the house, the screen door creaked as Micah, her 8-year-old son, bounded out, a half-eaten piece of toast in one hand. "Look, Mama," he shouted, holding up a bent nail he'd pulled from the porch steps. "Fixed it." Naomi smiled, brushing the hair from his forehead. "You're my little handyman, huh?" Micah grinned, unaware of the tension that clung to his mother's every breath, unaware that cops were targeting them, slowly, silently tightening a noose. As she ruffled his hair, a distant rumble of tires reached her ears. She froze. Another black SUV crested the hill and rolled slowly past their property. Windows tinted so dark she couldn't even see the driver. The third one this week. Her stomach knotted. Micah tugged at her hand. "Mama, you said you'd help me build my birdhouse today." "I will, baby," Naomi said, her voice tighter than she intended. She kissed his forehead. "Go grab your stuff. I'll be right behind you." As Micah darted back inside, Naomi's hand drifted to the old shotgun leaning against the porch. She hadn't fired it in years, but lately its presence felt necessary. The SUV slowed at the far corner of her field, paused, watched. Naomi lifted her chin, squaring her shoulders. She refused to be intimidated on her own land. This farm had belonged to Carter family for over 80 years. Back when Naomi's grandfather, a sharecropper who'd saved every penny, finally bought the land that no one thought a black man could own. He raised a family here, built a legacy brick by brick, harvest by harvest. This farm was her bloodline, and now they wanted to take it. Later that afternoon, Naomi loaded her beat-up Ford with baskets of produce for the Willow Creek Farmers Market. Micah sat in the passenger seat, swinging his legs and chattering about birds and hammers and 1,000 other innocent things Naomi could barely focus on. As they pulled into the town square, Naomi's unease returned. Eyes turned toward her truck as she parked. Conversation stalled. Smiles tightened. She knew that look. They didn't want her here. Setting up her modest stand, Naomi laid out tomatoes, beans, and eggs with practice care. Her neighbor's stands overflowed with colorful displays, but hers carried something different. Something pure, something real. No chemical pesticides, no corporate labels. Real food, real sweat, real life. Naomi Carter, came a syrupy voice behind her. She turned to see Monica Price, the wife of the local bank president. White sundress, expensive sunglasses, smile as sharp as barbed wire. "Still trying to keep that little patch of dirt going?" Monica asked, her tone honeyed with false sweetness. "Bless your heart." Naomi forced a polite smile. "Some things are worth the fight, Monica." Monica's gaze drifted to Micah, who was carefully arranging her bundles. "And how's your little helper? Heard he's being homeschooled now. Such a shame. Kids need structure." Naomi's blood simmered. "We're doing just fine," she said, each word clipped. From the corner of her eye, Naomi noticed Deputy Kyle Rawlins standing near the coffee vendor, pretending not to watch her. His uniform was crisp, his face unreadable behind mirrored sunglasses. Cops had started making more appearances lately, not just patrolling, but inspecting, snooping, questioning her farming practices. They were targeting her. Cops targeting a black single mother in ways that weren't written in any report, but felt clear as day. Later, while selling a few cartons of eggs to a kind older woman, Naomi saw Deputy Rawlins approach. License and permit checks, he claimed. Routine. Naomi knew better. She'd seen white vendors selling without so much as a second glance from law enforcement. Still, she handed over her papers, everyone meticulously maintained. Rollins barely looked at them before nodding stiffly and moving on. It wasn't about papers. It was about pressure. It was about making her feel like an outsider in her own hometown. The ride home was quiet. Micah, sensing the heaviness in the air, fidgeted with his seatbelt. "Mama," he said finally, "are we gonna have to leave?" Naomi's throat tightened. "No, baby," she said softly. "This is our home." She gripped the steering wheel harder, knuckles whitening. Maybe they could intimidate others. Maybe they could scare some folks into selling out. But not her. Not Naomi Carter. Not a black single mother who had already survived too much to back down now. As they bumped down the gravel driveway, Naomi spotted something nailed to her front gate. A piece of cardboard scrawled with red spray paint. "Sell or burn." Her heart slammed against her ribs. Micah didn't see it, too busy unbuckling his seatbelt. "Good." She parked, calmly removed the sign, and tossed it into the truck bed. Inside, she double-locked the doors, checked every window, and made a silent vow. Whatever storm was coming, she would meet it head-on. She would not break. She would not bow, because this was more than land. It was memory. It was blood. It was family. And Naomi Carter, a black single mother being targeted by cops and corporations alike, had no intention of letting them win. Not now. Not ever. The next morning came wrapped in heavy fog, the kind that clung low to the earth like a warning. Naomi Carter woke early, her body still aching from yesterday's farmer's market, her mind weighed down with unease she couldn't shake. After making sure Micah was busy at the kitchen table, head bent over a worksheet she had crafted for his homeschooling, Naomi grabbed her clipboard and headed outside. It was inspection day. Not a real inspection. No! This was the other kind. The kind where cops target a black single mother under the thin pretense of regulatory compliance. She barely made it past the chicken coop before she saw the first squad car kick up dust at the end of her driveway. 2 deputies climbed out, all polished boots and unreadable stares. Deputy Rollins and Deputy Bryce, the same ones who had loitered near her stand at the market the day before. "Morning, Miss Carter," Rollins drawled, approaching with a clipboard in hand. "We received some anonymous concerns about livestock overcrowding and waste management violations." Anonymous concerns. Right. Naomi folded her arms across her chest. "My permits are current. You're welcome to look, but everything's legal." "We'll just take a little look-see," Bryce said, grinning as if they were old friends. They didn't ask permission. They didn't need to. Not under the agricultural emergency clauses the county had recently dusted off. Another tool for them to harass her with. Another way cops could target a black single mother without leaving bruises anyone could photograph. Naomi followed them around the property, teeth grinding as they measured the distance between chicken coops and water sources, counted goats, examined compost bins. Bryce even made a show of sniffing the air near her vegetable patch. After an hour of poking, prodding, and muttering into their radios, Rollins handed her a yellow citation slip. "Failure to maintain proper sanitation standards," he said. "Fines $200. Payable at the courthouse." Naomi stared at him. "You're fining me for having a farm that smells like a farm?" Rollins shrugged. "Rules are rules." "And who do the rules apply to?" Naomi snapped, unable to stop herself. The deputies exchanged a look, one of those silent conversations where everything was said without words. "Have a nice day, Miss Carter," Rollins said smoothly. They left, tires spitting gravel onto her front steps as they sped away. Naomi crumpled the citation slip in her hand, her nails biting into her palm. Cops target black single mothers not with bullets sometimes, but with paper, with pressure, with a slow, crushing weight designed to break you from the inside out. That afternoon, Naomi packed her truck again. This time heading not to market, but to City Hall. She needed to appeal the fine, file a protest, do something to fight back. But the moment she stepped into the cramped government office, she knew it was useless. Behind the plexiglass window sat Teresa Mayfield, a woman Naomi had gone to high school with, a woman who had once laughed when Naomi tried out for the cheer squad, whispering something about stay in your lane. "Naomi Carter," Teresa said, fake surprise dripping from her voice. "Didn't expect to see you here." Naomi slid the citation under the window. "I'm here to contest this." Teresa barely glanced at it. "Appeal hearings are scheduled 6 months out. You can pay the fine now or let it double." 6 months, Naomi repeated, disbelief tightening her throat. "By then they'll have buried me in fines." Teresa shrugged, tapping her manicured nails against the counter. "Should have kept that little farm of yours cleaner, Naomi. Town's growing. Standards are higher now." Naomi's jaw locked, heat rising behind her eyes. It wasn't about sanitation. It was about pressure. It was about reminding her that no matter how hard she worked, she didn't belong. Not here. Not in their new Willow Creek. Not as a black single mother standing alone against a system that knew exactly how to make people disappear. Quietly, legally, devastatingly. Naomi picked up the citation and turned without another word, feeling the stairs follow her out onto the cracked sidewalk. She almost made it back to the truck before running into Sheriff Harlan, looming near a lamppost with arms crossed and a smug smile curling under his salt and pepper mustache. "Miss Carter," he drawled, straightening as she approached. "Seems you're having a rough week." Naomi kept walking, refusing to engage. "Word of advice," he called after her, voice carrying across the empty street. "This town's changing. Folks want a certain order. Maybe it's time to consider selling before things get harder." Naomi spun on her heel, anger flaring. "You mean before you make them harder?" Harlan's smile widened. "I'm just saying, a smart woman would take a good offer while she still has options." Naomi narrowed her eyes. "You don't scare me, Sheriff." "No." His tone was almost amused. "Maybe you should be scared. 'Cause when cops target people like you, things tend to escalate." He tipped his hat mockingly and sauntered away, leaving Naomi standing in the middle of the street, fists clenched so tightly her fingernails dug into her palms. That night, back at the farm, Naomi struggled to keep her composure as she helped Micah with his math homework. He giggled at a joke she barely heard. He didn't see the exhaustion dragging her shoulders low, the fight burning through every vein. After she tucked him into bed, Naomi sat alone on the porch swing her father had built. The stars were brilliant overhead, indifferent to the battles being waged below. She could leave, take one of the lowball offers, start over somewhere safer, somewhere newer. But Naomi Carter wasn't built for running. Her grandfather hadn't bled into this soil for nothing. Her father hadn't spent years fighting off banks and storm damage and droughts so she could walk away. And her son, her brilliant, beautiful Micah, deserved to grow up knowing what it meant to stand your ground. No, she wouldn't bow. She wouldn't break. They could send citations. They could send black SUVs. They could even send threats wrapped in polite smiles. But Naomi Carter was a black single mother who understood exactly what was at stake. And if they were coming for her, they better come ready for a war. 2 days later, Naomi Carter was elbow deep in fixing a busted irrigation pipe when she heard the slow, deliberate crunch of tires over gravel. She straightened, wiping mud from her hands onto her jeans, and shaded her eyes against the noon sun. A polished, gleaming black cruiser rolled to a halt in front of her farmhouse, the kind of car they reserve for official business or for making a statement. When the driver's door opened, her stomach tightened. Sheriff Harlan stepped out, every inch the portrait of smug authority in a neatly pressed uniform and a badge that caught the sunlight like a dagger. Naomi didn't move, didn't wave, didn't smile. She simply waited, feeling the silent pressure of the land around her, the land her father had walked, her grandfather had tilled, and her son now played upon. The sheriff took his time, adjusting his belt, removing his hat, smoothing down his thinning hair. He approached with the slow, predatory confidence of a man who already thought he'd won. "Afternoon, Miss Carter," he said, stopping a few feet away. "What do you want, Sheriff?" Naomi kept her voice even, refusing to give him the satisfaction of fear. Now, he said, feigning wounded pride. "That's no way to greet a neighbor. I didn't invite you onto my property." His lips twitched, not quite a smile. "Technically, I'm standing on a public access road. Naomi crossed her arms. And technically, harassment is still illegal. Even here. The sheriff chuckled, low and humorless. Big words. Dangerous attitude. He took a slow step closer, his boots stirring dust from the dry earth. You see, Naomi, he continued, dropping the fake niceties. This little farm of yours? It's become inconvenient. Inconvenient, she repeated, her blood simmering. Harlan nodded, hands clasped behind his back, like a man giving a sermon. The town's growing. Investors are looking to clean things up, make Willow Creek a model community. Good schools, shiny new developments, safe streets. He leaned in slightly, his voice dropping low. And you, with your rundown farm and your stubbornness? Well, you don't exactly fit the brochure. Naomi said nothing, jaw clenched tight. And, he added with a sly glance toward the house where Micah's toys littered the porch, it'd be a real shame if some unfortunate incident made the county question whether this was a fit environment for a child. Cops target black single mothers by threatening their children without ever raising a hand. This was how it happened. Quiet violence dressed in polite words. Naomi stepped forward, closing the distance between them until only inches separated them. You leave my son out of this. Harlan didn't flinch. Instead, he smiled that cold, wolfish grin. I'm just offering friendly advice. Sell now. Take the money. Move somewhere more accommodating. And if I don't? The sheriff's eyes glinted with the ugly satisfaction of a man who enjoyed breaking people. Then we'll make life difficult. He tipped his hat mockingly, turned on his heel, and strolled back to his cruiser like he was leaving a church picnic. Naomi stood rooted to the spot, fists trembling with rage as the car disappeared down the drive. That night, Naomi sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at the property tax bills spread out like landmines across the surface. Micah was asleep upstairs, clutching his battered stuffed bear, the same one Naomi's father had given her when she was a little girl facing storms much different, but just as fierce. The sheriff's words echoed in her head. Inconvenient, dangerous, difficult. She could feel the trap closing around her. First the fines, then the rumors. Next would come fabricated health violations, surprise inspections, maybe even a CPS visit claiming her son wasn't safe. She was no fool. She knew how cops target black single mothers, not always with bullets or batons, but with paperwork, procedures, and plausible deniability. They'd bury her in process, strangle her dreams in red tape. Naomi pushed the bills aside and buried her head in her hands. For the first time in a long time, she let the tears come. Hot, furious, helpless. Was she enough? Was she really enough to stand against an entire town, an entire machine alone? The front door creaked suddenly. Naomi froze, heart hammering in her chest. Slowly, she rose, grabbing the heavy flashlight she kept on the counter. Another creak, then a voice, low and familiar, carried from a porch. Naomi, it's me. She recognized it instantly. Her body moved before her mind caught up. She flung open the door, and there he stood, silhouetted against the moonlight. Logan Carter, her brother, the one they said had died 3 years ago in a dusty corner of Afghanistan. But he wasn't a ghost. He was real, solid, changed. His once boyish face was sharper now, eyes colder, body built for war. Logan, she breathed, hardly believing it. He nodded once. No time for reunions. We have a lot to fix. Before Naomi could process anything, he gently pushed past her into the house, sweeping the rooms with quick, practiced glances. What? How are you here? She stammered. They messed with the wrong family. Logan said simply, setting down a worn duffel bag with a heavy thunk on the floor. And just like that, everything shifted. The weight of fighting alone lifted. The war she thought she was losing had just gained a soldier. A special forces brother who knew exactly how the game was played and how to turn it against them. The Carters were no longer corner prey. They were a force ready to fight back. The night was unnaturally quiet around the Carter farm. Even the crickets seemed to have stopped singing. Inside the farmhouse, Naomi sat at the kitchen table, still stunned from Logan's return. He was alive, and he hadn't come back empty-handed. Maps, surveillance photos, and schematics were spread out between them. It was overwhelming. But beneath Naomi's exhaustion, a new fire had ignited. She wasn't alone anymore. She wasn't fighting blind. She had her Special Forces brother back, and he brought the full weight of his training with him. You have to assume everything you do is being watched now, Logan said, tapping a map with the back of a pen. They've marked you. They won't stop. Naomi swallowed hard. I figured that out when the sheriff started hinting they'd take Micah. Logan's jaw flexed with silent rage. They picked the wrong family. A sudden knock at the door made Naomi jump. Logan was already moving, flashlight in one hand, pistol in the other. Silent, methodical. He motioned for her to stay back. But when he peered outside, there was nothing. No car, no figure on the porch. Just the empty night, heavy and wrong. False alarm, he said, but his voice was tight. They locked every window, every door, checked every room. Only then did Naomi feel safe enough to go upstairs and kiss Micah goodnight, smoothing his curls with trembling fingers. It happened at 2:47 a.m. The first explosion shook the house like an earthquake. Naomi jolted awake to the sound of glass breaking. Micah screamed from his bedroom. She bolted from her room, heart hammering against her ribs. Stay inside. Logan barked as he rushed past her, already slipping into tactical mode. Naomi ran to Micah's room, scooping him into her arms just as another blast echoed across the fields. Smoke, thick and acrid, seeped into the windows. Naomi staggered to the front door and threw it open. The sight outside stole the air from her lungs. The barn, her father's barn, the heart of their farm, was ablaze. Flames licked the midnight sky, painting everything in hellish orange and red. And moving in the shadows, around it were three masked figures. Arsonists, saboteurs. Cops target black single mothers like Naomi by sending cowards in the night. When threats don't work, they burn what you love. She stumbled forward, clutching Micah, but Logan caught her by the arm. Stay back, he ordered. She watched helpless as her brother melted into the darkness with the same terrifying efficiency that had once made him lethal on battlefields oceans away. What happened next didn't feel real. From the trailing, Logan struck. One by one, the attackers fell, silent, swift, brutal. No wasted movements. By the time the second figure even realized they were under attack, he was face first in the dirt, unconscious. The third tried to run. Logan tackled him before he reached the road, pinning him with a knee and yanking off his mask. The man's face twisted in terror. Naomi recognized him instantly. Deputy Wilkes, one of Harlan's men. Proof. Right there. No deniability left. Logan hauled the man to his feet, like he weighed nothing. You tell your boss, he growled. You just escalated the wrong war. He shoved Wilkes toward the road. The deputy stumbled away, bloodied and terrified, disappearing into the night. Naomi and Micah watched from the porch as Logan returned, illuminated by the inferno devouring the barn. For a moment, he looked like something out of legend. Smoke curling around him, muscles tense, face grim. Micah clung tighter to Naomi, whispering, Uncle Logan's like a superhero. Naomi's throat tightened. Yeah, baby, she thought. He is. But even superheroes bleed. Logan wiped soot from his face and scanned the perimeter. They'll be back, he said grimly, with backup. Cops. Maybe worse. Naomi looked at the burning barn, at the decades of memories turning to ash, and felt something hard and deep inside her. You think I'm scared of them now? She said quietly. Logan turned to her, really looking at her, and in her eyes he saw it. The same unbreakable will that had carried their family through slavery, through Jim Crow, through every dirty trick the world had thrown at them. You're a Carter, he said simply, respect deepening his voice. Yeah, Naomi answered, lifting her chin. And we don't bow. They stayed up the rest of the night. Logan patrolled the property, rifle slung low, eyes constantly scanning the darkness. Naomi tended to Micah, who had finally fallen into a fitful sleep on the couch. By dawn, all that remained of the barn were smoking embers and the skeletal remains of the frame. Naomi walked the property in the early morning light, taking stock of the damage. The irrigation system smashed, fences cut clean through, livestock pens sabotaged. They hadn't just wanted to scare her. They wanted to cripple her, force her hand, break her spirit. But as she stood amid the ruin, Naomi Carter felt something inside her burn hotter than the flames that had destroyed her family's legacy. They could destroy her buildings. They could poison the well. They could try to take her land. But they would never break her soul. Not while her feet were planted on this soil. Not while Micah still had a future to fight for. Not while her Special Forces brother stood at her side. That afternoon, as Logan repaired the fence line, Naomi sat down at the kitchen table with a legal pad and a pen. She wasn't thinking about survival anymore. She was thinking about resistance, new security cameras, motion sensors, alternative irrigation methods, legal support, media exposure. They weren't going to just survive this siege. They were going to win. The sheriff, Vanguard Holdings, all their little puppets. They had no idea who they had declared war on. And Naomi Carter? She was ready for them now. The world burned around Naomi Carter. Ash floated through the night air like blackened snowflakes, swirling around the skeletal remains of the barn. The air was thick, heavy with smoke, anger, and the suffocating weight of betrayal. She held Micah tight against her chest, heart pounding, eyes locked on the nightmare scene unfolding in front of her. And then, through the smoke, a shadow moved. Not the fumbling panic of the arsonist who had set her family's history alight. No, this figure was something else entirely. Purposeful, lethal, unstoppable. Naomi's breath caught in her throat. Micah whimpered, "Mama, who's that?" The figure stalked through the flames with terrifying grace, closing in on the masked men with silent fury. One of the attackers raised a bat. Too slow. The shadow struck first. A brutal, surgical takedown. The attacker crumpled, gasping for air. Another man tried to run, but he barely made it 3 steps before the shadow took him down too. One hard blow to the back of the knee, another to the neck. Efficient, ruthless. Naomi watched, frozen. It was like watching a ghost. A ghost who fought like a man who'd seen too many battlefields, who knew exactly where to hit in a fight before it ever really began. A ghost she knew. Somewhere deep in her bones, she knew. The last attacker, realizing he was hopelessly outmatched, turned and sprinted for the trees. The shadow didn't even chase. He didn't have to. The man tripped over the wreckage of the irrigation line, hitting the dirt hard, whimpering in fear. The shadow walked toward him, slow, deliberate. The attacker scrambled to his knees, threw down his mask, and blurted out, "Please, I didn't know. I was just told to scare her." The shadow didn't respond. He simply stared down at him, unblinking. And that was enough. The man bolted into the night, disappearing into the trees, his cowardice trailing behind him like a bad stench. Naomi stood frozen on the porch, Micah trembling in her arms. The shadow turned. For a long, agonizing moment, they stared at each other through the smoky haze. And then the figure stepped forward, pulling off his mask. The fire behind him cast his face in stark relief. The hard-set jaw, the familiar curve of his brow, the burned scars that hadn't been there before. Her heart stumbled in her chest. "Logan." Her voice cracked like dry wood. He nodded once. Solid. Real. Alive. "Hey, sis," he said, voice rougher than she remembered. "Long time." Micah gasped, his tiny hands clutching Naomi's shirt. "Uncle Logan?" The fierce lines on Logan's face softened. "Yeah, little man. I'm real, and I'm home." Naomi dropped to her knees, Micah still in her arms, overwhelmed by the swirl of emotions crashing through her. Relief, disbelief, grief, rage. She thought she had buried him 3 years ago. She thought the war had taken him forever. But here he was, back, different, changed, but back. And in that moment, with the barn collapsing behind them, the Carters reunited on scorched earth, together, inside the farmhouse. Naomi barely let Logan cross the threshold before grabbing him in a desperate hug. For a moment, he tensed and used the softness of human contact. Then he relaxed into it, one arm wrapping protectively around his sister's shoulders. Micah stood a few feet away, still staring at him as if afraid Logan might vanish like a dream. Finally, Naomi pulled back enough to look him in the eyes. 3 years, Logan, she whispered. 3 years we thought you were dead. I had to be, he said simply. It was the only way to keep you safe. Safe. The word tasted bitter after everything she had endured. They were already coming after us, she said. Burning down barns, threatening Micah, trying to buy us out with pennies. Logan's face darkened. They've gotten bolder, he said grimly. Vanguard Holdings isn't just buying land anymore. They're clearing it. Naomi sank into a chair, Micah climbing into her lap. What happened to you? She asked quietly. Where were you all this time? Logan crouched down to their level, his gaze flickering to Micah before meeting Naomi's eyes. Special assignment, he said. Black Ops. Classified. After my unit uncovered something ugly, I became a liability. What do you mean, ugly? Naomi pressed. Logan shook his head. Not here. Not now. It's bigger than we thought. And it's connected to why they want your land. Naomi blinked. The farm. Yeah, he said. This isn't just about money. It's about what's buried under this ground. Later, while Naomi tucked Mike into bed, Logan sat at the kitchen table, methodically cleaning a small pistol. The fire had gutted the barn, but the farmhouse was still standing. For now, Naomi returned, her face tight with exhaustion. She dropped heavily into the chair across from him. Why now? She asked. Why come back now after all this time? Logan's hand stilled on the pistol. Because they crossed a line, he said. They targeted a black single mother. Because they thought you were vulnerable. They thought no one would fight for you. He met her gaze squarely. They forgot you had a special forces brother. The words hung between them, heavy, unbreakable. Naomi felt a lump rise in her throat. She hadn't cried when the sheriff's men fined her. She hadn't cried when her fences were cut. She hadn't even cried when the barn, the heart of her family's heritage, burned. But now, hearing the steely conviction in Logan's voice, the dam broke. Tears slid down her cheeks, silent and hot. Logan said nothing. He just reached across the table and squeezed her hand once, hard and sure. A promise. That night, while Naomi and Micah finally slept, Logan stood watch by the window. The smoking ruins of the barn smoldered in the moonlight. Somewhere out there, Sheriff Harlan and his men were planning their next move. Vanguard Holdings was tightening its noose, and every power in that small town was lined up against them. But this time, they weren't facing a scared, isolated black single mother. They were facing a warrior, a ghost, a brother who knew how to fight a war nobody else even knew existed. And Logan Carter was ready. Morning broke over Willow Creek, painting the charred ruins of the Carter farm in muted gold. But Naomi Carter didn't have time to mourn the ashes. She had to survive. And survival meant war. In the soft light of dawn, Logan Carter stood at the edge of the field, scanning the horizon like a man who never stopped expecting trouble. Naomi approached quietly, her boots crunching on the gravel. Micah's still asleep inside the farmhouse. You sure about this? She asked. Logan didn't turn. He just nodded once. You want to keep this farm, Naomi, he said, voice low but firm. You need to learn how to fight smart. Naomi crossed her arms. You think I can't handle myself? I think you're tougher than half the soldiers I serve with, Logan said, finally looking at her. But toughness is enough, not against what's coming. What exactly is coming? Naomi pressed. Logan's jaw tightened. More than just the cops, he said. Vanguard Holdings plays dirty. They'll use local authorities, private contractors, maybe even fake federal agents. They'll come with court papers one day, armed raids the next. It's a slow siege. Naomi exhaled sharply, her chest tightening. They're targeting a black single mother, Logan added grimly. They think you're isolated, that you'll fold. He took a step closer. But you're not isolated anymore. A long beat. Then Naomi nodded. Teach me, she said. The first lesson was simple. Awareness. Your biggest advantage is knowing they're coming before they know you're ready. Logan said. He showed Naomi how to read tire tracks near the property line, how to spot the difference between random hikers and surveillance teams, how to listen for the low hum of a drone even when it was miles away. They walked the perimeter of the farm at sunrise, Logan pointing out natural choke points, blind spots, and hiding places she'd never noticed before. You gotta think like prey, he explained, crouching low behind a thicket, but be ready to strike like a predator. Naomi watched him, absorbing every word. Logan wasn't just teaching her to defend herself. He was rewiring the way she thought about survival. The second lesson was harder, setting traps. This farm is your battlefield now, Logan said as he spread out blueprints of the property across the kitchen table. He outlined a defense strategy, marking spots for homemade tripwires, hidden cameras, and noise traps. Simple tricks. Tin cans strung together behind fences. Mirrors hidden in trees to watch blind angles. Wind chimes rigged along paths where none should exist. This isn't about killing anyone, Logan stressed. It's about slowing them down, creating confusion, buying time. They scavenged what they could. Spare wire, scrap metal, broken irrigation parts. Anything that could be turned into a deterrent. By nightfall, Naomi had rigged her first perimeter alarm. A set of old aluminum pie pans wired a trip if someone crossed the south fence line. When they tested it, the clatter echoed across the fields. Naomi grinned for the first time in days. Logan nodded approvingly. You're a fast learner, he said. Comes with being a black single mother. Naomi quipped dryly. You don't get second chances. Logan chuckled, a rare, genuine sound, and for a moment, the heavy shadows that clung to him lightened. The third lesson was the most brutal, mental warfare. Logan set up a series of surprise drills around the farm. One morning, while Naomi was feeding the chickens, a loud bang echoed from the far field. Logan's signal. Without thinking, Naomi scooped Micah into her arms and ducked behind the tractor, heart hammering in her ears. Logan emerged from the corn rows, stopwatch in hand. 9 seconds, he said, not unkindly. Good, but you need to get it under 7. Naomi scowled. This isn't a damn obstacle course. No, Logan said. It's real life. And in real life, hesitation gets people hurt. Naomi wiped the sweat from her brow. She wasn't used to feeling helpless, and she hated it. But deep down, she knew Logan was right. If the cops targeted them again, and they would, she couldn't afford to be anything less than ready. Some nights, after Micah had gone to bed, Naomi and Logan sat on the porch in silence, watching the stars emerge one by one. Naomi sipped from a chipped mug of coffee, the bitterness grounding her. You ever think about just leaving? She asked once, voice low. Logan stared out into the night. Every day, he admitted. But leaving doesn't fix what's broken. It just lets them bury it deeper. He turned to look at her. You stay. You fight. You make them see you. Naomi swallowed hard. You mean make them see a black single mother who refuses to back down? Logan smiled, a grim, proud smile. Exactly. The transformation wasn't overnight. It was slow, hard, painful. But by the end of the first week, Naomi wasn't the same woman who had stood helplessly as the barn burned. She moved differently now, alert, calculated. She checked fence lines before breakfast. She memorized license plates of unfamiliar cars. She taught Micah how to hide at the first sign of trouble. Her home was no longer just a farmhouse. It was a fortress, a symbol. And she was no longer just a farmer struggling to survive. She was a fighter, a protector, a black single mother who refused to be erased. And at her side stood her brother, her special forces brother, who would burn the world down before he let them lose again. The final test came on a stormy afternoon, thunder rumbling low in the distance. A black SUV pulled up at the edge of the property. Naomi spotted it from her upstairs window. No plates, tinted windows. Logan stood behind her, silent. You ready? He asked. Naomi's hand tightened around the baseball bat leaning against the wall. She met her brother's gaze, fire burning behind her eyes. I was born ready. As the SUV backed away, testing, probing, waiting for the right moment to strike, Naomi Carter stood tall at the window. No fear, no retreat, Because when the cops target a black single mother, they better be damn sure they're ready to face her special forces brother, too. The storm didn't hit Willow Creek until nightfall, but Logan Carter knew it was coming hours before the first thunder rolled. It wasn't the weather he was worried about. It was the enemy moving in the shadows. Naomi Carter was stacking boxes in the barn when Logan found her, rain already pattering against the metal roof. "You need to see this," he said, voice grim. She followed him out to the edge of the property, where a pair of deep tire tracks scarred the muddy driveway. Fresh, even though no one had officially come to farm all day. "They were here," Logan said, crouching down to study the ground. "Probably when we were inside." Naomi felt her stomach twist into knots. "Think they planted something?" Logan nodded. "Guaranteed." Cops' target tactics weren't always about kicking down doors or dragging people away in cuffs. Sometimes they were quieter, dirtier. They planted drugs, illegal weapons, fake evidence, anything they could find later to justify taking everything away. And now it was Naomi, a black single mother, in their crosshairs. "Come on," Logan said. "We check everything." They moved methodically through the farm, inspecting the truck, the sheds, even the old grain silo. Nothing. Until Logan opened the glove compartment of Naomi's battered pickup. Taped to the inside was a small plastic bag filled with white powder. Naomi staggered back like she'd been punched. Her hands trembled with fury. "Those bastards," she hissed. "They think they can just..." Logan carefully removed the bag, holding it with a cloth. "They're setting you up," he said, "and they'll be back soon with a warrant. But I didn't do anything." Naomi's voice cracked. Logan's gaze was steady. "Doesn't matter. Their goal isn't justice. It's control. And you're standing in their way." Thunder rumbled above them, as if the heavens themselves were outraged. Naomi's fists clenched. "I'm not running." Logan's mouth quirked in approval. "Good, because we're not just going to survive this." He tucked the planted evidence into a small lead-line box and smiled. "We're going to turn around on them." The plan was simple. Risky, but simple. Logan set up hidden cameras inside Naomi's truck. Small, battery-powered, motion-activated devices he had brought back from a life he no longer spoke about. He wired the dashboard and seat seams. Any movement inside the truck would be recorded in crystal-clear detail. "If they come back to find their little package," he explained, "we'll catch it all on video." "And then what?" Naomi asked, heart hammering. "Then we bury them with their own lies," Logan said. His voice was colder than the rain soaking into the earth around them. The weight felt endless. For 2 nights, Naomi and Logan kept watch from the second-floor window, coffee and adrenaline keeping them wired. Micah slept peacefully in his room, blissfully unaware of the storm gathering just beyond his dreams. Naomi hated dragging her boy into this fight, but she hated the thought of surrender even more. On the 3rd night, just past midnight, headlights flickered down the old county road. Logan's hand tightened around the binoculars. "Showtime," he murmured. 2 sheriff's department cruisers, and a familiar black SUV idling a few yards behind them. Sheriff Harlan himself had come for the show. Naomi felt a surge of rage. The cops' target strategy was unfolding exactly as Logan had predicted. Create a false narrative, swoop in as saviors, and erase her family's legacy under the pretense of law. But not tonight. Not this time. Deputies Reynolds and Dawkins climbed out of First Cruiser. They wore smug expressions, like men who believed they were untouchable. Flashlights swept across the farmyard as they made a show of investigating. Dawkins sauntered up to Naomi's truck and casually reached for the door handle. Logan flipped a switch upstairs. The cameras activated. They watched as Dawkins slipped on a pair of gloves, popped open the glove compartment, and pulled out the very same bag of white powder they had planted days before. "Gotcha," Logan whispered. He adjusted another monitor feed. Audio crystal clear. Deputy Reynolds' voice cut through the rain. "Look at that. Open and shut case, huh?" "Poor girl won't know what hit her," Dawkins chuckled. From the shadows, Sheriff Harlan called out, "Bag it and tag it. We'll make the call in the morning." Naomi's nails dug into her palms, drawing blood. Stay calm, Logan whispered. They're hanging themselves. The deputy stuffed the evidence into a new evidence bag, standard procedure, and radioed it in like good little soldiers. Every second was being recorded, time-stamped, and automatically uploaded to an encrypted server Logan had set up. When they finished, they sauntered back to their cruisers, laughing. Naomi stared after them with eyes full of fire. They think they've won, she said through gritted teeth. Logan's smile was razor-sharp. Let them. The next morning, just after sunrise, Naomi stood on her porch as the sheriff's department returned in force. Sheriff Harlan climbed out of his SUV, hat pulled low against the drizzle. Miss Carter, he said, falsely polite, we have a warrant to search your vehicle for illegal narcotics. Naomi met his gaze head-on. Of course you do. Deputy Dawkins swaggered over to the truck, wearing the same smirk from the night before. He opened the glove compartment again, empty. Confusion flickered across his face. Then panic. Harlan's expression darkened. Find it, he barked. Deputies tore through the truck, the barn, the house. Nothing. Not a single crumb of fake evidence remained. Logan stepped onto the porch beside Naomi, arms crossed. You looking for this? He asked, holding up the lead line box. Harlan's eyes narrowed. And who the hell are you? Logan's smile didn't reach his eyes. Family. And a very good witness, Naomi added, her voice strong. Harlan bristled. You're interfering with a police investigation. No, Naomi said coolly. We're documenting a criminal conspiracy. Logan pulled out a flash drive. Here's the footage of your deputies planting evidence. Oh, and you might want to smile. It's already backed up to 3 different places. Plus, a copy just went to a certain local journalist. Sheriff Harlan's face turned a dangerous shade of red. You don't know who you're messing with, he growled. Logan's smile sharpened. Neither do you. As the police retreated, knowing they couldn't make an arrest without exposing themselves, Naomi leaned against the porch railing. The rain had stopped. The clouds were beginning to break. Micah peeked out the front door, his face full of cautious hope. Naomi scooped him up, holding him close. You were right, she whispered into his hair. Sometimes we don't have to run. Logan watched them with guarded pride. They had survived the first strike, but he knew this war was far from over. The cops target a black single mother when they think no one is watching, but now they were. And this time, the Carters were ready to fight back, with truth, with grit, and with each other. Because when you threaten a family built on blood, sweat, and memory, you better be ready for what comes next, especially when a special forces brother is standing in the way. The flash drive sat in the center of the kitchen table like a live grenade. Naomi Carter stared at it, heart thudding in her chest. The footage Logan had captured wasn't just evidence. It was a weapon, a direct hit against a system that had spent generations crushing families like hers. But a weapon meant nothing if you didn't know how to use it. Logan leaned back in his chair, arms folded, eyes calculating. We can't just hand this over to any reporter, he said. They'll bury it, twist it, make it disappear. Then what? Naomi asked. We sit on it, wait for them to come at us again. No, Logan said. We take it to someone who can't be bought. He tapped a name into his old phone. Sienna Reyes, a local journalist, small time but fearless. She didn't answer to corporate sponsors. She didn't soften her reporting to protect powerful friends. And most importantly, she already had a history of challenging the sheriff's department on their shady dealings. She's our shot, Logan said. Naomi exhaled, nerves tightening. If we go public with this, they'll come harder, Logan finished for her. You need to be ready for that. Naomi glanced down the hall where Micah slept soundly. She was ready. She had to be, because when cops target a black single mother in her home, the real fight isn't just for survival. It's for truth. Sienna met them that evening at an abandoned gas station on the edge of town. She arrived alone, her beat-up Toyota rumbling into the parking lot. When she stepped out, she looked exactly as Logan remembered, denim jacket, a battered satchel slung over one shoulder, sharp brown eyes that didn't miss a thing. Logan Carter, she said, arching an eyebrow. Word was you were dead. Rumors are useful sometimes, he replied. Sienna's gaze shifted to Naomi, who was standing tall despite the fear etched into her posture. And you must be the one causing all this fuss, Sienna said with a crooked smile. Naomi nodded. I didn't start it, she said, but I'm damn sure going to finish it. Sienna grinned. I like you already. Inside the gas station's dusty back office, Logan laid out the plan. He handed over the flash drive, not the original, but a copy. The original was hidden where no deputy or Vanguard contractor would ever find it. You'll find everything you need, Logan said. Planted evidence, corrupt officials, patterns of intimidation. Sienna plugged the drive into her laptop, her face hardening as she scrolled through the videos. Sweet Jesus, she muttered. They're not even subtle about it. Naomi leaned forward. Can you get this out? Fast. Sienna nodded grimly. I'll need 24 hours to verify and write it airtight. But once it's up, it'll spread like wildfire. And I'll make damn sure national outlets pick it up. And Vanguard? Naomi asked, her voice tight. They'll try to shut it down, Sienna said bluntly. But if we move fast and loud enough, they won't be able to contain it. Naomi squeezed her hands into fists. I don't care what they do to me. I'm tired of being afraid. Sienna looked at her for a long moment. Then you better be ready for the storm, Miss Carter, because when the truth hits, it hits everyone. They left the gas station just before midnight. The wind had picked up, rattling the battered signs and sending loose papers skittering across the lot. Logan scanned the shadows, every instinct screaming to stay alert. Cops target. Operations didn't just crumble overnight. When the machine started breaking, it fought back, desperate, dirty. We need to go dark for a bit, Logan said as they climbed back into Naomi's truck. No phones, no credit cards. They'll be watching. Naomi nodded, determined. Where? I've got a place, Logan said. Old hunting cabin. No power, no neighbors. Perfect for being invisible. As they drove into the night, Naomi glanced at her son sleeping peacefully on the back seat. Whatever it took, she would protect him, even if it meant burning the whole rotten system to ground. The next morning, the story hit. It exploded across social media like dry brush fire touched by a match. Local deputies caught planting evidence on black single mother's farm. Exclusive, systematic land theft linked to Vanguard holdings exposed. Special Forces brother returns to help family under siege. It wasn't just a local scandal anymore. It was national. Talk shows, radio hosts, political commentators. Everyone was talking about Willow Creek and the Carter family. Even major outlets like CNN and MSNBC picked it up within hours. Sienna called them from a burner phone, her voice breathless with excitement. You did it, she said. It's out, and it's bigger than I ever dreamed. Naomi's hand shook as she clutched the phone. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to hope. Maybe, just maybe, they had turned the tide. But Logan wasn't celebrating. He sat by the window of the cabin, watching the road through binoculars. They'll come, he said quietly. They always do. Sure enough, by mid-afternoon, Naomi's old neighbors began calling. Sheriff Harlan wasn't taking the exposure, lying down. His department had set up emergency environmental inspections at the farm. They claimed Naomi's property was a public health hazard, a thin excuse to seize it under federal regulations. Same playbook, different mask. The cops' target strategy had just evolved. They couldn't beat her with lies anymore. So now they'd try with bureaucracy and brute force. Naomi slammed her fists onto the table. They're still trying to take everything. Logan's face remained calm, but his knuckles whitened. Let them try. He pulled out a second flash drive, an even more damning one. Footage from a farm surveillance showing county inspectors tampering with soil samples, falsifying contamination reports. This isn't just about you anymore, Naomi, Logan said. It's about every family they thought they could silence. And it's about showing them they picked the wrong damn farm. Naomi lifted her chin. They messed with the wrong black single mother. And, Logan added with a grim smile, they forgot about her Special Forces brother. Later that night, Logan and Naomi sat outside under the stars, sipping coffee from cracked mugs. The air was thick with the smell of wet pine and distant rain. "Do you regret coming back?" Naomi asked, voice low. Logan didn't answer right away. He stared up at the stars, cold, distant, unbothered by the chaos of human lives below. Finally, he said, "I regret not coming back sooner." They sat in silence, a quiet promise hanging between them. They weren't just fighting for a farm anymore. They were fighting for memory, for family, for justice. And they weren't done yet, not even close. The morning air felt wrong, heavy, charged, like the moment right before a summer storm when everything goes too still. Naomi Carter stood on her porch, arms crossed, watching a line of government-marked vehicles crawl up the dirt road toward Willow Creek Farm. Hazmat trucks, SUVs with tinted windows, black-clad men who didn't wear badges, but didn't need to. Her stomach twisted. This wasn't just another scare tactic. This was Vanguard's final move. The official excuse? A sudden public health emergency, requiring the immediate quarantine of the Carter farm. The real reason? Bury the evidence. Destroy the land. Silence Naomi, Logan, and anyone who dared to stand with them. Cops target. Operations didn't end when the truth came out. They just changed the battlefield. And today, the battlefield was her home. Logan Carter appeared at her side, a pair of binoculars slung around his neck. "They're here sooner than I thought," he said grimly. Naomi didn't need to ask who they were. She could see the logo on the trucks, not the sheriff's department this time, but Federal Environmental Response Division. A paper-thin cover for Vanguard's private contractors. "They're moving fast," Naomi said. "Because they know they're exposed," Logan replied. "They have to contain this before more people start asking questions." He handed her a walkie-talkie. Time to call on the others. Within minutes, Naomi's allies began arriving. Farmers from neighboring counties, church groups, college students who had seen the viral story online. They came in pickups, old sedans, even on foot. People of every color and age, carrying homemade signs and steely determination. Cops target a black single mother? Special Forces brother returns? This time, the world was watching. Naomi stood at the center of it all, microphone in hand, heart hammering in her chest. She raised her voice over the growing crowd. They tried to intimidate us. They tried to criminalize us. They tried to bury the truth under lies and paperwork. She looked directly at the lead official stepping out of a black SUV. But we are still here. Cheers erupted from the crowd. A wall of human resistance was forming right here at Willow Creek. And Naomi Carter was no longer alone. The man in charge, a pale, sharp-featured figure with a government ID clipped to his jacket, approached. "Ms. Carter," he said, voice cold and official. "You are ordered to evacuate the property immediately. Failure to comply will result in arrest and forcible removal." Naomi didn't flinch. "I have a legal right to independent environmental testing," she said, quoting the clause Tessa had helped her memorize. "I also have a right to peaceful assembly." The man smiled thinly. "You have 30 minutes to comply." Behind him, hazmat-suited men began unloading equipment, portable fencing, heavy machinery. They intended to seize the land today, now or never. Inside the farmhouse, Logan coordinated with their core group. Tessa was setting up live streams on multiple platforms. Carmen organized the crowd into peaceful but immovable rows. David, their tech specialist, jammed unauthorized radio signals trying to block their communications. This wasn't just a protest anymore. It was a siege, a fight for dignity, for heritage, for survival. Logan's jaw tightened as he watched the unfolding scene from the window. "They're not going to back down," he said. "Neither are we," Naomi thought fiercely. At the 30-minute mark, the lead official returned with deputies, some from neighboring counties, wearing riot gear. "This is your final warning," he said. Logan stepped forward, calm and solid. "You try to move on this property. You will do so in front of every major news outlet, every civil rights organization, and 500,000 people watching this live stream right now." He pointed to the cameras stationed around the farm. "Make your choice." The official's face hardened. Behind him, reinforcements moved forward. Tension crackled through the air, thick enough to choke on. A single wrong move, and everything would explode. The first scuffle happened near the east fence. A contractor tried to pull a protester aside. Phones recorded everything. The crowd roared, forming tighter ranks. Inside the farmhouse, Naomi watched the footage stream live. Cops target peaceful protesters. Black single mother fights to defend her land. Special Forces brother stand his ground. The hashtags were already trending. Vanguard's operation was unraveling in real time. In desperation, the lead official made the call, "Advance." The hazmat suits moved in slowly, methodically, toward the heart of the farm. Naomi grabbed the walkie-talkie. Positions all around the property. Allies stood shoulder to shoulder. No weapons, no violence, only bodies and truth. Logan met Naomi's gaze. "Whatever happens," he said, "we hold." Naomi nodded. "We hold." The first line of protesters linked arms tighter. The contractors hesitated, reluctant to push against cameras, against mothers holding babies, against elderly men and women who refused to move. The image was too powerful, too human, too impossible to spin. One by one, the hazmat suits faltered. The lead official shouted into his radio, "Continue!" But it was too late. The moment had turned. No stormtrooper optics could undo the fact that they were the villains here. The world was watching and judging. In a final act of desperation, a squad of deputies tried to breach the side of the property near the caves. Logan was ready. He moved fast, intercepting them, standing squarely in their path. "You don't want this fight," he warned. The deputies hesitated, recognizing something in his stance. A man who had seen war, and who would not yield. The lead deputy radioed for orders. "Stand down," came the reluctant reply. "Too risky. Too exposed." The siege broke like a rotted dam under a flood. The government vehicles reversed down the dirt road, one by one. The hazmat suits packed up their unused gear. The contractors vanished into the trees. By sunset, the only sounds were birds returning to the fields and 1,000 people cheering. Naomi stood on the farmhouse porch, looking out over her land, her family's land. Still theirs, still free. Tears pricked at her eyes. They had survived. Because when cops target the wrong black single mother, when they forget she has a Special Forces brother willing to stand beside her, they lose. Every time. The sun barely kissed the horizon when the first satellite trucks rolled into Willow Creek. Media vans with logos from every major news outlet, CNN, ABC, even independent reporters, lived streaming to millions. It wasn't just a local dispute anymore. It had become a national flashpoint. A black single mother standing her ground, cops targeting her livelihood, a Special Forces brother fighting back with tactics sharper than steel. The headlines wrote themselves. And Naomi Carter stood in the center of it all, ready for the biggest stand of her life. At dawn, Naomi, Logan, and Carmen held a quick briefing inside the farmhouse. They crouched over a hand-drawn map of the property, their fingers tracing out defense positions. Tessa stood nearby, already live-streaming preparations, her camera feeding directly to a swelling audience online. "You sure about this?" Carmen asked, her brow furrowed. Naomi met her gaze with unshakable determination. "This is our home. They took enough from us already. We don't run." Logan nodded. "And this time, we fight with the one thing they can't defeat, the truth." The plan was simple. Hold the perimeter. Stay peaceful. Make it impossible for Vanguard or their hired thugs to paint them as aggressors. The community had mobilized overnight. Teachers, truckers, ministers, grandmothers, college students. Hundreds of them, each person armed only with resolve and smartphones. Cops target the vulnerable when they think no one's watching. Today, the whole damn world was watching. At 8 a.m. sharp, a new convoy appeared. Sleek black SUVs. Military-style armored trucks, unmarked. More men in tactical gear than Naomi had ever seen outside a war movie. They weren't wearing sheriff's badges now. These were private contractors, ghosts for hire. And their orders were clear. Take Willow Creek Farm by any means necessary. The contractors disembarked in tight formations, like soldiers, disciplined, calculating. Their leader, a barrel-chested man with icy eyes, marched forward, barking orders into a calm device. Naomi and Logan stood atop the farmhouse steps, unarmed but unyielding. A news helicopter buzzed overhead, cameras rolling. The commander stopped a few yards away, shouting so all could hear. This property has been declared contaminated under Emergency Order 47A. All civilians must vacate immediately. Logan cupped his hands around his mouth and answered with the whole world listening. We're exercising our right to peaceful assembly. You come through us, and you do it live. The crowd cheered behind them. The commander hesitated. They weren't supposed to be facing this much resistance or this much attention. For a tense moment, everything froze. A single breath, a single decision. Then, a hand signal from the commander. The contractors advanced. Naomi's heart raced as the first line of mercenaries moved toward the human barricade. Mothers clutching their children, elderly men leaning on canes, teens holding homemade signs. No weapons, no aggression, only fierce, immovable presence. Logan positioned himself in the center, a shield between the crowd and the incoming storm. Cameras whirred. Phones captured every heartbeat of the standoff. One wrong move, and Vanguard's thugs would become the villains of every screen in America. The contractors pushed harder. One grabbed the arm of a teenage boy in the front row, yanking him back roughly. The crowd surged forward instinctively, locking tighter. Naomi felt the pressure like a living thing. Fear, rage, unity, surging through everyone. A chant started somewhere. This is our land. This is our land. It grew louder, faster, a thunderous rhythm that shook the very ground. The contractors faltered. They had trained for riots, for violence, not for this, not for peaceful, defiant humanity, refusing to be erased. Frustrated, the commander shouted again, disperse or face arrest. But it was too late. Behind the mercenaries, blue and white vehicles pulled onto the scene. The FBI, the state attorney general's office, and civil rights observers. Tessa's live feed had worked. Thousands of messages had flooded government hotlines. This wasn't just a farm anymore. It was a symbol, a battleground over justice, race, power, a battleground Vanguard had just lost control of. The FBI agent stepped out, hands up to show they meant no harm. The lead agent, a sharp-eyed woman named Agent Monroe, called out clearly, "This is a federal investigation site. All unauthorized personnel must stand down." The mercenaries hesitated. Their commander swore under his breath. Another agent produced a warrant, one naming Vanguard Holdings directly, signed that very morning. The contractors' faces twisted with rage. But orders were orders. Slowly they retreated. The crowd erupted in cheers. Naomi dropped her head for a moment, overwhelmed with relief. They had won, at least a day. As the contractors withdrew, Agent Monroe approached Naomi and Logan. "You have no idea how important what you did here is," she said, handing Logan a folded document. "Evidence you gathered, the footage, the testimonies, is blowing this thing wide open. Not just here, nationwide." Naomi clutched Micah's hand tightly, her chest swelling with emotion. Logan gave a rare, genuine smile. "They came for the wrong farm," he said quietly. As news crews captured the emotional aftermath, hugs, tears, laughter under the autumn sun, Naomi looked around at the faces surrounding her. They weren't just neighbors anymore. They were family, an unbreakable wall against injustice. The cops target the wrong people when they think power and fear can silence them. But a black single mother with nothing to lose? And a special forces brother who returned from the grave to stand by her side? That's a storm they couldn't stop. Not now. Not ever. The sky above Willow Creek shifted from bright blue to deep bruised purple as dusk settled over the farm. The air buzzed with energy, victory, disbelief, exhaustion. But Logan Carter stood rigid near the barn ruins, his special forces instinct screaming. It wasn't over. Not yet. Naomi watched him from the porch, holding Micah close, her heart hammering in her chest. She trusted him now more than anyone. When Logan's head tilted slightly, catching some movement none of them had noticed yet, Naomi felt the change instantly. "What is it?" she whispered. Logan's voice was calm. Too calm. "They're coming again. Different play. More desperate." He was right. Hidden in the hills beyond the farm, black-clad figures, not cops this time, not contractors either, were moving. Private security from Vanguard's most secretive branch. And they weren't here to negotiate. They were here to erase evidence, witnesses, anyone who could connect Vanguard to decades of corruption, especially a certain black single mother who had refused to fold, and her stubborn special forces brother who had turned the tide. Logan moved swiftly, issuing quiet commands. Carmen, Tessa, and the farmhands who had stayed to protect the land sprang into motion. Positions were taken. Escape routes double-checked. Every camera, every recording device was live. They weren't fighting with bullets. They were fighting with the truth. And they were ready. "You get Micah out of here if it goes bad," Logan told Naomi, voice low but firm. "I'm not leaving you," she said. Their eyes locked. Years of unspoken pain, loyalty, and blood binding them tighter than any order. Logan nodded once. Side by side, then, whatever came, the first wave of attackers moved in fast and brutal. Flashbangs erupted across the yard, throwing the world into searing light and deafening noise. But Logan had prepared for that. Each team member donned homemade noise-canceling earbuds, simple phone plugs hidden under caps. They moved like water, flowing, absorbing, resisting. While the mercenaries stumbled, disoriented, the defenders held. Phones recorded every second. Live streams lit up like Christmas trees. TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, millions watching in real time. Cops target a black single mother's farm. Special Forces brother defends against mercenaries. Hashtags exploded across social media. There will be no burying this night. As the smoke cleared, Logan spotted the commander, a tall man with pale skin and dead eyes, barking into a radio. Logan's jaw tightened. He recognized that voice. Marcus Shaw, ex-military, court-martialed for war crimes. Now Vanguard's go-to cleaner. If Shaw was here, they weren't just trying to scare the Carters. They were here to end them. Without hesitating, Logan slipped through the shadows, moving faster than any of Shaw's men could track. He closed the distance silently. At the edge of the ruined barn, he called out, "Shaw!" The mercenary commander spun, shock flickering across his face. "Carter?" A smirk. "You should have stayed dead." Logan's voice was ice. "So should you." The two men circled each other. No guns now. Just raw, lethal experience honed through years of brutal wars nobody wanted to remember. Around them, chaos continued. Mercenaries clashing with farmers and townsfolk. Phones recording every injustice. The will of a community refusing to break. And at the heart of it, Logan and Shaw. Fists met flesh. Boots kicked dust. The fight was brutal, ugly, efficient. Shaw outweighed Logan, but Logan had something Shaw never would. Purpose. Every punch he threw wasn't just for survival. It was for Naomi, for Micah, for every black family they tried to erase with silence and shame. The turning point came when Shaw reached for a hidden knife. Logan, anticipating it, moved quicker. He disarmed Shaw with a brutal twist of the wrist, the blade clattering into dirt, and drove him to his knees. Heavy breathing, both men bloodied and bruised. Logan pressed the heel of his boot to Shaw's hand, pinning him. "You lost," Logan said simply. Shaw sneered. "You think this ends anything? Vanguard owns the courts, the banks, He stopped abruptly as the sound of sirens filled the valley. Real sirens this time. FBI, federal marshals, state troopers, an entire battalion of legitimate law enforcement, swarming in like a rising tide. Agent Monroe emerged from the first vehicle, flanked by a half-dozen agents. She surveyed the chaos, her expression grim but satisfied. "You have no idea what a mess you just uncovered," she told Logan. He shrugged. "That's your problem now." Shaw was cuffed roughly, dragged his feet. As he was led away, he hissed toward Naomi. This isn't over. There's always another buyer. Naomi met his gaze, fierce and unflinching. No, not anymore. As the FBI secured the scene, Logan pulled Naomi and Micah into a rough embrace. They stood there for a moment, silent under the stars, the weight of it all pressing down and lifting at the same time. They had broken the chain. Cops targeted them. Corporations tried to erase them. But a black single mother and her special forces brother had shattered the cycle. Together, later that night, as exhausted volunteers picked up the wreckage and reporters broadcast a victory across the nation, Tessa approached Logan with a wry smile. "You know you just became a legend, right?" Logan shook his head, weary. "I'm no hero." He glanced over to where Naomi sat on the porch swing, cradling Micah and laughing softly for first time in weeks. "I'm just a brother who came home." The morning after the standoff, the sun rose over Willow Creek like a blessing. Golden light spilled across the battered fields, glinting off the broken fences and scorched barn beams. It should have looked like devastation. Instead, to Naomi Carter, it looked like rebirth. Micah ran barefoot through the dewy grass, laughter spilling from his chest, his inhaler swinging forgotten from a lanyard around his neck. For the first time in months, he sounded free. Naomi stood on the porch of the farmhouse, her farmhouse, and watched it with a hand shielding her eyes. Beside her, Logan leaned against a cracked porch post, arms folded, gaze steady. No black SUVs, no masked mercenaries, no deputies lurking with fake warrants. Just the land, the sun, the promise of something better. The news had hit every channel overnight. Cops target black single mother's farm. Special Forces brother exposes corporate conspiracy. Tessa's footage, stitched together from dozens of phones and drones, dominated the airwaves. The hashtags were unstoppable now. Hashtag black single mother. Hashtag Special Forces brother. Hashtag cops target. Hashtag we are Willow Creek. The story had broken far beyond their small town. It had shaken the foundations of the corrupt systems that had preyed on people like Naomi for generations, and it had awakened something Naomi never thought she'd see. Hope. On the front porch, Carmen grinned as she handed Naomi a stack of legal papers, stamped and sealed. "Official word from the state," she said. "Vanguard's claims? Dismissed. Sheriff's Department? Under federal investigation. And this," she tapped the top document. "This confirms your ownership. Uncontested. Untouchable." Naomi clutched the papers to her chest for a moment, overcome. "I don't even know what to say," she whispered. "Say you're ready," Carmen said, clapping her on the back. "Because this isn't just your fight anymore. It's bigger now." Inside the farmhouse, the kitchen had become a war room for something new. Rebuilding. Maps of the land. Blueprints for restoration. Lists of families displaced by similar land grabs across the state. Logan pinned a final sheet to the wall. Willow Creek Community Project. Naomi traced her fingers over the bold letters. "What is this?" she asked. "Our future," Logan said simply. "Not just surviving anymore. Building something they can't tear down. A place for education. A place for healing. A place where kids like Micah could grow up without fear being told they didn't belong on their own land." They worked for weeks. The fields were replanted with the help of volunteers who came from neighboring towns. Construction crews, some working pro bono, rebuilt the barn stronger than before. An old equipment shed was transformed into a community center, offering free workshops on farming, history, and civil rights education. Micah painted a mural on the new barn wall, a phoenix rising from the ashes, bright against the red planks. "Why a phoenix?" Naomi asked him one afternoon as they sat on the steps, watching the colors dry. "Because we burned," he said simply. "But we're still here." Naomi hugged him tight. Stronger than ever, she thought. And they weren't alone anymore. Word spread far and wide. Families who had been pushed off their land by companies like Vanguard began reaching out. Some wanted to visit. Some wanted to fight back. All wanted to believe that standing your ground could still mean something. Logan, who had once believed his only home was a battlefield halfway around the world, found himself anchoring to this soil again. He turned down offers from government agencies, private security firms, even lucrative speaking tours. Home was the fight that mattered now. When reporters asked what motivated him, he always said the same thing. I'm just a brother who came home to protect his family. And that was enough. The final piece came one chilly autumn morning. A large crowd gathered in the heart of the newly rebuilt farm. Journalists, activists, farmers, teachers, children, even survivors from other counties, all stood shoulder to shoulder. At the center, Naomi stepped up to a makeshift podium, holding Micah's hand. Logan stood behind her, silent and proud. Naomi cleared her throat, heart thundering. This land, she said, her voice strong, was meant to be lost, bought, buried, forgotten. She paused, looking out over the sea of faces. But we didn't let that happen, because it isn't just land. It's blood, it's memory, it's future. Cheers rippled through the crowd. And they didn't just target a farm, Naomi continued. They targeted a family, a black single mother who was supposed to give up. They underestimated us. Her gaze found Logan's. They forgot about the people who fight back, about the Special Forces brother who would walk through fire for his family, about a community that refuses to break. The crowd roared approval. Micah beamed up at her, pride radiating from his small body. And now, Naomi said, lifting her chin, we build for those who come after us. We plant, we teach, we heal. Applause thundered through Willow Creek, louder and louder, until the very ground seemed to vibrate with it. Later, as the sun dipped low and the last of the visitors wandered off, Naomi, Logan, and Micah sat on the porch steps. The cicadas sang. The air smelled of earth and fresh hay. You ever think it'd end like this? Naomi asked, nudging Logan's shoulder. He chuckled softly. I didn't think it'd end at all, he admitted. I just knew I wasn't going to let them win. Naomi leaned her head against his shoulder. You didn't just protect us, she whispered. You gave us a future. He said nothing, but the way he squeezed her hand said everything. Micah yawned and curled against Naomi's side. Tomorrow would bring new battles, legal fights, land recovery projects, media wars. But tonight belonged to them. The camera would slowly pull back, rising over the Carter farm. Fresh crops swayed in the wind. Children played where the black SUVs once circled. Elders told stories under the shade of new trees. And above it all, painted on the barn in Micah's shaky but bold letters, we are still here. If the story of courage, resilience, and family moved you, don't let it end here. Hit that subscribe button, like this video, and share it with someone who believes that truth, justice, and love are worth fighting for. Join our growing community, because every view, every share, every voice helps stories like Naomi's shine even brighter. Stay tuned for more powerful stories that inspire, challenge, and remind us what's worth standing up for. Together, we're louder. Together, we're unstoppable.